Hi there, this is Corey, and I've got two red Alfa Romeo 4Cs behind me, and I'm going to tell you all about them to give you sort of an unofficial buyer's guide. Let's take a closer look. Wow, what are the chances we have not one, but two red Alfa Romeo 4Cs here at Porsche Colorado Springs? Well, I'll tell you why. Just so happens that yesterday we took in on trade this 2020 4C Spyder in Rosso Alfa, and nobody on my channel knows this, but this 2015 Rosso Alfa Coupe happens to be my own personal car. I've never shared content on it. I don't know why. It's a travesty. I really need to do more content. I've shot video. I just have never uploaded it to my YouTube channel. So more of that will be coming. But I thought, what a great opportunity getting both of these cars together to highlight the differences between the Coupe and the Spyder, between the launch edition and between the final model year. This is a 2015 first year, that's a 2020 final year, so kind of the bookends of 4C production. Talk about the differences between all the different options and get them out on the road to see how they each drive. Now, this car is completely bone stock. My car has been modified with a few things to make it a little faster, a little easier to live with, brake a little bit better, corner a little bit better, etc., etc. So Alfa Romeo 4C, for those who don't know, a lot of people don't know about this car because they didn't make a heck of a lot of them. This car signaled Alfa Romeo's return to the US market in 2015, or I guess you could say late 2014. First time I saw one of these was at the New York International Auto Show in 2014. I was absolutely smitten by the car. I knew I had to own one. I heard that they would start at a base price of $55,000, which means that, you know, within a couple of years' time, I could probably afford one. Now, of course, now none of them actually ended up selling for $55,000. They were all optioned out to generally the low to mid 70s, like both of these cars were low 70s MSRP. But they featured a carbon fiber chassis, which would be the lowest priced carbon fiber chassis sports car ever produced. 1.75 liter 4-cylinder engine, which is very much Alfa Romeo thing, 1.75 liter engine, for those of you who know. Turbocharged, making a healthy amount of power and torque, and very lightweight. These cars weigh about 2,500 pounds, so about as much as a new Mazda Miata, but with a heck of a lot more power. They were produced from model year 2015 to 2020, and all told in the USA, we got just over 2,000 cars. So not a ton of cars. You contrast that to cars like the Lotus Elise and Exige. Lotus made about 10,000 of those cars. So not too often you see these cars, unless maybe you go to an Italian car show or something like that. So it's really exciting to see one on the road. Everybody always gets so excited when I drive mine. And yeah, just really neat as far as that's concerned. They came in two body styles: the fixed roof coupe, which has a glass cover over the engine, and the Spyder, which has a fabric removable top, which kind of has that harder cover over the engine. Nice thing about the Spyder with this car, it's a carbon fiber chassis, so it's got all the rigidity in the world, so it doesn't make it any flimsier to have the roof being removable. Now, not showing you a whole lot of color variety here. These are both trimmed in Rosso Alfa or Alfa Red. They did come in a couple other reds. They also came in black. They came in a gorgeous metallic gray, a pearl white, a regular white, and metallic blue for one of the special edition Spyders. There was, I don't know if it was 2019 or 2020, they came out with a final edition Spyder that had a specific name, can't remember right now. And the last 33 cars were the Stradale Tributo, which had a special red carbon fiber tub and special red metallic paints for the last 33 cars that were built. Now, those things command big money. These are still really affordable. So, you know, essentially, I paid $50,000 for this car in 2020, and today I'd like to think it's still worth just about $50,000. This owner bought their car for $72,000. New in 2020, and we'd like to think today, hopefully, it's still worth about $70,000. Both cars have right around 20,000 miles. That one's got 17.5, mine's got 22,500 miles on them. If you see the European cars, you'll notice the European cars generally have different headlights. They call them the Spyder eye. It has all these like little LEDs, kind of exposed carbon. I'm not a big fan of those personally. I'm kind of glad the US cars never got those headlights, but you may notice that. Some other differences looking at it, mine is the launch edition, so it basically came fully loaded. It was one of the first 500 cars produced for the US market. Ironically, 500 cars out of 2,000 cars means that 25% of the cars were launch editions, but it is a numbered car and it does come fully loaded, so that's pretty cool. So some exterior differences. Mine has these ducts going into the front bumper. This one has the gold emblems all around the vehicle. So the Alfa Romeo logo on the front and back and on the inside, and even on the key has that gold logo, as opposed to this one, which is the silver logo, which is no less pretty, of course. This one's fairly lightly optioned and mine's fully loaded, so I'll explain the differences between the two. This one has body color exterior mirrors. This one has carbon fiber exterior mirrors. This one, being the Spyder, had the option for the carbon fiber roof. The Coupes did not have that option, so just the black pillars. Now they both have the 18 and 19-inch dark 5-hole wheels. People also call them the teledials. That's kind of the affectionate term for them. There was also a multi-spoke wheel option, primarily seen on the Spyders that would come in either silver or gray. There were a couple other wheel options. You could get them with 17 and 18-inch wheels, but I almost never see those in the US. You would see them more in Europe. They all have some form of dual exhaust, either exiting on either side of the bumper or in the center for certain models. I'll touch on that here in just a moment. This car has the standard exhaust, which has the sort of larger opening with nothing in there. And if you look closely in the mesh there, you can see that there is a muffler for this car. So it's quite a bit quieter compared to this car, which has the factory option race exhaust. The race exhaust is recognized by having these sort of dual rings on the exhaust tip. And then if you look in here closely, there is no muffler. So it's pretty loud. And mine's been modified with an aftermarket downpipe, so it's even louder. The third option, there might have been a fourth that I'm forgetting, but the third option, which was really probably the best option, was one from Akrapovich, I believe is how you say it. Akrapovich. Anyway, center exit dual exhaust here that was valved, so you could actually adjust the volume level of the exhaust if you wanted it quiet for your neighbors or if you wanted it louder out on the street. Unfortunately, they never sold that after the fact, so you had to buy the car with that exhaust, and there's really no way to get it later. Too bad. Also, options. So this one has the standard suspension, which is going to be a little more comfort orientated, a little bit softer springs and dampers from what I understand. Now, I haven't driven this car yet, so I can't tell you exactly what that feels like, but I'll be able to do that here shortly. And then this one has the optional race suspension, so stiffer springs and dampers. I will tell you, living in Colorado, where the roads are not the best in the world, it's not my favorite. I kind of wish it had a little bit softer suspension. Now, you can fix that through the aftermarket with coilovers and things of that nature. While we're on the topic of handling, I think part of the reason why these cars were so maligned originally was because when they first came out, they had pretty sketchy on-limit handling. Not really a great thing. Unfortunately, a lot of the automotive journalists at the time really crucified these cars for the handling. Alfa Romeo took that feedback and made some fixes, but I think it was a little bit too late, and the reputation was fairly harmed on these cars. So by 2020, certainly these cars were sorted out. And I think 2016 onward, they had made adjustments to the suspension to sort of fix that. And then on the early cars, the 2015s, they actually developed what they called the pit stop program, where you could voluntarily bring your car in and they would make adjustments to the car to correct that. I don't recall offhand exactly what they did to the car, but there was that program that you could do. Now, the aftermarket also took note of this and came out with a solution as well. A company in the UK called Alfa Workshop, or Alfa Works for short, came out with what they called suspension blocks. And basically where, I don't know if I'll be able to show you in here, but up here, where the control arms mount to the chassis, they come out with these little spacers that would space out the control arms and effectively correct that suspension geometry. So I've never driven an early car unmodified to be able to tell you, oh yeah, that's pretty dicey. I can understand what they're talking about. I've only driven my car and a couple others that are later, and to me they feel fine. So I don't know what to say on that, but anyhow. Let's see, what else can we talk about? Let's pop the hood, or the engine lid. All right, so you have this very small trunk space. So this is why I say this is maybe not the most practical car. You know, if this is going to be your only sports car, I'm not sure I can recommend a 4C. I'm honest. Like, I am honestly considering replacing mine because I've had it for 5 years. It's not the most practical. I find myself sometimes making excuses not to drive it. I think the same was true of the gentleman that traded this car in. It was his only sports car. His wife hated getting in and out of it. His coworkers made fun of him getting in and out of it. You know, it's just very limited. There's not a lot of cargo space. If you have other sports cars, you know, you've got a 911 in the garage, you've got Ferrari, you know, there's a lot of guys that own this as like their 5th car or something like that. You know, I know guys that actually own Testarossas and F40s and real serious exotic cars that drive this to keep miles off their super exotic cars. And what's also cool about that, while I'm on the topic, is I feel like these cars gain you entry into the supercar club without having to spend supercar money. Like, I've driven mine past Lamborghinis and Ferraris and gotten waves and all sorts of stuff. So it's really cool to get that recognition without having to spend, you know, multiple 6 figures. Anyway, going back to the engine. So this is the 1.75 liter turbo 4-cylinder engine. Obviously it's covered up here, so there's not much you can really see, but it's pretty tidy. It makes 237 horsepower stock and 258 pound-feet of torque. So nice healthy amount of power and torque from this little engine in such a lightweight car. 6-speed DCT or dual clutch automated manual transmission. Fun fact, it's actually shared with the Dodge Dart, so it comes from pretty humble beginnings, but it actually works fairly well. It's definitely not as good as a Porsche PDK, so I'm not going to pretend like for 1 second that it's anywhere close to as good as a 7 or 8-speed PDK. PDK blows every other transmission out of the water, bar none, end of discussion, but it's good enough. Mine, while we're under the engine compartment, has been modified. It has an ECU tune from Alfa Works, so that's going to bump the power up to 280 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. It has transmission tune, so the transmission control unit's back there, so that's going to tighten up the shift points. It has a larger intercooler. It's about a 50% larger intercooler core. That's made by a company called Scara 73. We've got silicone hoses throughout. I have a gearbox cooler. I don't know if you can see that sort of anodized fitting in there, but there is a Mocal oil cooler along with a Cetrab cooling unit to help keep the gearbox cool if you do track work or more spirited drives. Go ahead and close this up. And these are pretty stout engines. There's a lot more you can do with them. People have built these out to 2 liters. They've put hybrid turbos on them. They've put twin scroll turbos on them. I think one of the most popular thing to do is really to tune the ECU and call it a day. I went a touch further with mine because I found that when I took it to the track, the car would heat soak and it would pull timing, and my top speed was going from, let's say, 120 on the main straight to 112 on the main straight. So it was getting a little too hot. So what I did was put the bigger intercooler in and a high flow catted downpipe to help mitigate some of that heat soak. If I wanted to go another step forward, you can put a hybrid turbo in it, which takes the original turbo, modifies the compressor wheel and housing and all that good stuff. And that will bump it up to about 335 horsepower. I think 337 is the claim number. Some other cool things you can do. I did a wheel stud conversion. Normally these have bolts like any other European car. I did extended studs just to make wheel changes a little bit easier. While I'm down here, let's talk about tires. So the Alfa 4C came on the Pirelli P0 OEM tire. These are also much maligned, and anyone who puts P0s on their car shouldn't. Mine came with the stock P0s when I first got it. It was one of the first things I got rid of. Swapped them out for these Bridgestone Potenzas. Now these are no longer in production. This is the S007A. I don't know what options are out there right now, but it's very popular to change out the tires. It changes the handling dynamics, makes the car much better. So highly recommended if you're looking at a 4C. If it has Pirellis, chuck them in the trash. Get literally anything else, Continental, Bridgestone, Michelin, whatever. It's also popular to put wider tires on. So you have pretty limited selection because these have 205 section front tires and 235 section rear tires. The 205s are the limiting factor here. So you can go wider up to a 225 section tire in the front and a 245 or a 255 section tire in the rear. And that's going to open up quite a bit more tire choices. And that's all without having to go to aftermarket wheels. Wheels choices are fairly limited because this is a funky bolt pattern. It's 5x98. It is not 5x100, which is really annoying if you're trying to search for aftermarket wheels. You really only have a handful of options, but these are quite good. I believe they're forged. They're very lightweight. Some of the other wheel options may be a little bit heavier. If you're going to do more track stuff, you're probably going to want to go to a 17 and 18-inch wheel, but that's another story entirely. And then going back to kind of wheel, tire, brake modifications, mine has been upgraded with Terox, I think that's how you pronounce it, brake pads, and we have some heavy-duty brake fluid to help mitigate heat. So lots of brake upgrades you can do. There's aftermarket two-piece rotors that you can put on and things like that. What are some other popular things? Lots of cosmetic modifications people do. Mine is pretty much stock on the outside, save for these applique carbon fiber trim rings that go around the headlights. Actually, when I bought this car, it had a GT wing bolted to the back of it. It had a front chin spoiler. It had a half vinyl wrap with lots of racing numbers and cool stuff. I mean, it looked like a race car. It looked fully like a race car. I ran it that way for about 3 years, got tired of it, decided to put it essentially back to stock. All right, let's have a look at the interior. Now, normally I start with the old car, move to the new car, but the new car, in this case, is a little more basic, so I am gonna highlight some differences between the two. You had a few different interior color choices, a few different seat material choices. Now, this one has the full leather seats. Seats are made by Sabelt, which is pretty cool. It's an Italian company. Oh, one more cool thing I want to talk about with these cars. Now, a lot of cars these days are like this mishmash of international producers, suppliers, whatever. These cars are made in Italy, in Modena, at the Maserati factory. They are using 95% Italian parts content. So it's as much Italian car as it could possibly be. It's probably more Italian than some Ferraris. And it's, speaking of Ferraris, this is the same release handle that you'll see on Ferraris and lots of other cars. Kind of a fun little thing. So anyway, they could be had with fabric seats. I almost never see, I've seen like one car in the USA with fabric seats. Most of those end up, were in Europe, but fabric seats, you could have leather and Dynamica or Alcantara synthetic suede. And then your color choices were pretty much black or red, or there was I believe a cognac color, sort of like a medium brown, which is also really pretty. It's called tobacco, excuse me. You could have them without leather all over the interior, but I, again, have never seen one in the USA trimmed that way. Maybe seen one without the leather dash. More on that in just a moment. But yeah, this is all trimmed top to bottom in leather with some red contrast stitching. We've got a leather grab handle here. This one's got a couple little storage pockets. There's not a lot of storage in these cars. I've got a coat hook back there. There's no carpet, almost no sound deadening. So it is, you know, a very visceral driving experience. You have carpets that bolt into the floor here. There's your two pedals. Sort of a low rent interior other than the leather appointments. This has just the handbrake, a couple cup holders, a small storage pocket here, and then your very small visibility out the window. Leather dashboard. One thing to look for on these cars, if you are looking to buy one, is it's very common, especially Southern cars, where if these get left out in the sun, the leather around the airbag will start to lift and it kind of looks baggy. It's not the prettiest thing in the world. Fortunately, neither of these cars have that issue, but something to be aware of if you are shopping for one. So the instrument cluster here, which if you'll give me just a moment to reach for the key, this one has the standard plastic cluster. You'll see on the other car it's trimmed in carbon fiber. But we've got a small TFT display. Really well laid out, simple, easy to use. I like it quite a bit. This one has an Alpine head unit. The early cars came with a Parrot head unit that was absolutely laughable. This one still looks pretty laughable, but at least it probably has a little more functionality. This one is outfitted with the backup camera. That was obviously DOT mandated. So when you put the car in reverse, let me put the car in reverse. There we go. There's your backup camera. So that's pretty cool. On the Spyder, in order to remove the roof, we just twist these guys out of the way, and then this pulls up, rolls out, and then goes into the trunk in a nice storage bag. We do have the drive selector, or the DNA switch. So you have N for natural or normal mode, D for dynamic, A for all weather, and then if you hold it in D, it will put it in race mode, which turns off traction and stability control, puts a G meter here on the dash. Yeah, you get all your vitals on here. Some people complain about the paddles. You say they're a little small, a little chintzy, they're not mounted to the column, whatever. I personally have no complaints about it. Speaking of the steering, this is not power steering. This is probably the newest car ever produced with non-power steering or manual steering. So there is quite a bit of weight to it. Once you get moving, obviously not so much. I think it's quite lovely. Some people do have their complaints about it, but you know what? For me, having owned a bunch of like late 80s Toyota MR2s with no power steering, it's an awesome blast from the past to get a car without power steering. And it's kind of funky that the car has a dual clutch gearbox but no power steering. It's just like, it's a very interesting layout, so to speak. We've got a brushed aluminum plaque here that says 4C Alfa Romeo. Very laughable HVAC controls. They are pretty cheap. What else can I say? I mean, it is what it is. All right, now let's move to the other car. I'll show you the differences there. One of the things I did mention, I made some quality of life upgrades in mine. So I have aftermarket seats from Eltec in Italy. They are carbon fiber. The seat brackets were made by GMS or Gale Motorsports, so that helps bolt them into the car. And then I've got Sebelt 6-point harnesses to help keep me in. Originally the car came with Sparco seats. They were really uncomfortable. I hated them. I got rid of them. But unfortunately I really don't fit in the stock seats at 6'2", so these bolt right to the floor. They have no slider, really no adjustment. So when I sit in this car, I actually fit. And so that was a tremendous quality of life upgrade for me. Your mileage may vary depending on your height and stature, all that stuff. So hopping in this car, one of the first things I noticed right away about mine versus that one is I have this cool little red cross stitch going down the door panel. Again, as I mentioned, this one has all of the gold emblems, even on the key, which is kind of neat. Compare that to standard emblem. This one being the launch edition has the number plaque. This is number 194 of 500. And then it's got this carbon fiber inlay that says launch edition 4C. Mine has been, I guess you could say, upgraded with an older Pioneer flip out head unit. The popular one for this is by a company named Joying. It's about an 8.8 inch screen, and it's a fixed screen, and it doesn't interfere with your air vents. The problem with this one, as you'll see in just a moment, is when I lift it up, it blocks my air vents. So usually I don't even use this foolish thing. This one has, as part of the launch edition, got the track pack. So again, it's going to be the stiffer suspension and the shocks and dampers. It's going to be the race exhaust with no muffler. It's going to be this carbon fiber gauge bezel. And then the launch edition car has also got the carbon fiber shifter bezel. Outside of that, how do the cars differ? Really in no meaningful way. You know, throughout the 5 model years of production, the horsepower, the torque never really changed. So it's really just differences in options and then a few special additions that were produced over the years. All right, so with those differences out of the way, let's see how the two cars drive. We have a lightly optioned late car. We have a heavily optioned early car with some light modifications. How does each one feel? Let's get them out on the road and find out. All right, let's start with the Spyder. So I wanted to do the light option car with no modifications first, and then we can drive my heavily optioned, somewhat modified car next and see how the two cars compared. First thing, this thing sounds like a vacuum cleaner compared to mine with the muffler. It's so funny. I've never heard a 4C so quiet. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I will say, if you're a taller driver, I am 6'2" with a tall torso. The fit in here is a little funky. The visibility in these cars is not great. It's a mid-engine sports car. You know, the Porsche Cayman is like the one notable exception. Visibility out the back is actually decent, but the rear view mirror blocks my view because my head is all the way up, kind of in the top of the roof. Now, it's really windy out, so I'm going to leave the Spyder roof on. I have driven one of these in the past. I think it was back in like 2017. I drove a Spyder with the roof off. It's nice, but honestly, the roof opening is fairly small. It's kind of like the Mazda Miata RF in that, like, it's like a Targa roof more than anything. So it didn't really influence my decision to buy one model or the other. I just figured I'm going to find the 4C that I want with the right options, whether it's a Coupe or a Spyder, and buy it. So I ended up with the Coupe because that's what I found. But anyway, so let's put it in 1 for drive. Here, let's take off because somebody's looking at me all weird. So right away, you will notice, because there's no sound insulation in the car, that there's quite a bit of road noise. It's all part of the experience. A little bit of brake squeak. That means you're using it. Okay, and I'm going to leave it in normal automatic mode, just putter over to the area where I'd like to drive it a little bit more spiritedly. First off, I think this car was criticized quite a bit when it first came out. Alfa took that criticism and made some changes. And I think any car post 2016 drives a heck of a lot better than probably whatever they were describing in those early reviews. Even this one on the Pirelli tires, which I think are a suboptimal choice, I find really enjoyable. One of the first things you'll notice driving the car, quite a lot of cabin noise. There's no sound deadening, there's no carpet, it's a carbon fiber chassis. You're going to get everything transmitted right into the cabin. So if you're not cool with that, consider something else. Let's see, what else? Manual steering, once you get moving, is quite nice. I enjoy it quite a bit. Obviously a little bit more of a chore at low speed, but I think it's nicely weighted. There's a little bit of dead on, well, maybe not even that much dead on center. I think it's actually pretty responsive. Paddle shift, good, responsive, no complaints there. I've got it in dynamic mode with manual shift, which is, unless you're in traffic, pretty much the only mode I recommend you ever put it in. Kind of the overarching theme feedback thing you'll notice driving the car. Tons of turbo noise, all this lovely induction noise. You get wastegate flutter, you get whoosh. This one, interestingly enough, compared to the cars with the race exhaust, doesn't really do that bark on upshifts. You know, people call it like the DSG farts or whatever, when it makes that kind of noise when you change gear. This one doesn't really do that with the standard exhaust. So if you're somebody that doesn't like that, there you go. The suspension is definitely firm, but compared to the race suspension on my car, it's a bit more supple. So I'd say a little more livable. I'm keeping the roof on because it's ridiculously windy today, so it may sound a little bit louder than normal. It is really windy. Like, this is not a normal amount of wind. Like, there's tumbleweed. Relatively civilized. Again, if you're expecting this car to be like a Porsche Cayman or an Audi TT-S or TT-RS, this is just not that. This car has some measure of civility, probably a lot more than a car from the 80s or the 70s or even the 60s. But it's a compromised car. It's meant to be a sports car for driving pleasure. Yes, it has a little bit of trunk space. Yes, it has air conditioning. Yes, it has a radio. And it has some, everyday niceties. But, I wouldn't ever consider, like, commuting in this thing. I know there are cars out there with 100,000 miles on them. I mean, God love them. I just couldn't do it. The owners that drive these cars every day, like, I think I would just rather burn up a cheap daily driver and have this as the weekender. I wouldn't even recommend it as your only sports car. It's my only sports car, and I'm thinking of replacing it for something a little bit more civil. If I could have a 911 and this, I mean, that would be the jam right there. Anyhow, all right, so that is the 2020 4C Spyder. This is a relatively low mileage example, fewer than 20,000 miles, 17.5 to be exact. It's been well kept. It's one owner, clean Carfax. So, I mean, this was a good example to take out on the road. Now we're going to drive my 2015 Launch Edition car, which is a fully loaded car with a few modifications that I'll talk about, and kind of compare the differences between the two. Okay, now we are in the coupe. Forgive my creaky, squeaky aftermarket seats. I don't know what's up with that, but anyway, I'm going to strap into my 6-point harnesses. They're actually made by the same company that makes the stock seats in these cars, which is Subelt. Go ahead and fire this up. So right away, you're going to notice in the cars with the race exhaust, quite a bit louder in the cabin. It's like borderline antisocial with the race exhaust, and then with my car with the aftermarket catted downpipe, it's pretty antisocial. I'm sure if it didn't have a catalytic converter, it would be even worse. But anyway, let's have a go. It's kind of the middle of the day, so I think I'm going to be stuck in hellish traffic. I'm going to put it in manual mode, manual shifting dynamic mode. So there's basically, from what I understand, two ways to get the race exhaust and the race suspension, either to get the Launch Edition, which is this car, this is a 2015, or to get the Coupe Track Pack, which would include the race exhaust, race suspension, and I believe the carbon fiber instrument binnacle. There's also a way to get it on the Spyder, but I don't know what options package they call that. I never get tired of that. There's so much whoosh turbo forced induction noise right behind your head. I've got a bigger intercooler from Scara 73 or Scaravelli, a company in Italy that makes parts for these cars. Adds quite a bit of volume to that intercooler for better cooling, but you also get a little bit more sound, which is pretty neat. You can put an aftermarket intake on it too. Going down this road, there's a lot of, like, I don't know, I guess they're repairs where they patch cracks in the pavement, and I take this road pretty frequently. It was definitely a bit smoother driving it in the Spyder. I mean, you still feel every bump. It's very, very much present, but it's a bit worse in the car with the race suspension. This car is definitely sprung and damped a lot more firmly. If I had the chance to do what I'm doing now 5 years ago, there's a very good chance I would have skipped the track pack and gotten a car with the standard suspension, just because it is harsh in Colorado Springs, man. They don't pave roads very often. They get pretty rough. So fortunately, they're starting to pave some more of the main roads and it's getting better, but I would definitely take that into consideration depending on where you live. Another cool thing with the race exhaust versus the standard is you get these barks on upshift. A lot of people, like, if you're in the VW community, they call them DSG farts, or the direct shift gearbox, where it makes that farting noise on overrun. It's like this bop noise. You get it shifting basically into gears 2 and 3. Occasionally in 4 if you're like really on it, but usually just gears 2 and 3. But it's fun. It's a fun thing. The car with the standard exhaust doesn't do that. Now, comparing the steering of the two cars, I really wish I could get these on the track to be able to feel a little more nuance between them and tell you that, one feels different from the other, but they both feel kind of similar. The 2020 being a car with the updated suspension and steering, and this one having the aftermarket suspension blocks. It'll still tramline, it'll still follow road crown, it'll still be a little bit twitchy, but it's definitely not the sort of, I don't know, death trap that they described the early cars as. I can't speak to that. I've never really experienced that. The brakes in this car feel heroic. It's got plenty of brakes. 4-piston calipers up front, single pistons in the rear, 2-piece rotors. I've got aftermarket pads with a more aggressive compound and some heavier duty, higher temp fluid. My tires are getting a bit old, so I'm probably gonna go sideways here. Woo! But yeah, I mean, this feels great. It's so much fun. It feels playful and serious at the same time. It's like the right blend. Yeah, nice firm brake pedal. I really like it. I don't get into ABS too much with it either, so you don't want an overactive ABS system either. As far as acceleration, like I mentioned, this car does have an ECU tune from the Alfa Workshop or Alfa Works. So that adds about 40 horsepower and I think about 60 pound-feet of torque. It definitely feels quicker. Not drastically though, it's not like a transformed car. Driving the Spyder, the stock car, is plenty quick and plenty fun. So, if you're on the fence about tuning or modifying your car, just don't do it. You still get plenty of fun with the stock car. Don't go sideways, don't go sideways. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. And you do have to anticipate boost kicking in. It's not like linear, like a naturally aspirated car. So you do need to get on the pedal a little bit earlier. Oh, that's just so much fun. I don't understand the people that decry this car for being any less than the most fun thing they've ever driven. I will agree with all of the criticisms about its practicality. It doesn't have much. And I would never take it as my daily driver. I have been driving it almost every day this week though, and it's less miserable than I remember it being. Maybe because I'm just having so much fun. All right, so with that part of the drive out of the way, I want to talk about like maintenance, servicing, repairs, things like that. Maintenance on the car, pretty standard. Annual service, 10,000 mile oil change. Fortunately, the consumable items, the tires are fairly small. The brakes are fairly small. They last a long time. Tires, I'd say you're probably in for about, call it $1,500 for a set of tires when that comes due. The brakes, depending on whether or not you do them yourself, could be, I would say, anywhere between $1,300 and $2,000 for the front brakes, particularly. You do have to do a timing belt service on this car. The engine does have a timing belt. Yay, good old Italian cars. The interval, I believe, is 5 years, 60,000 miles. I think you can stretch it out a little. I did mine at like the 7 or the 8 year mark. So for what that's worth, I mean, the car had like no miles on it when I got it, and the belt looked absolutely fine for just so you're aware. I wouldn't push it out much further than that though. I mean, you don't want to push your luck. It would be hard to get a replacement engine for this car if you break it. It is an interference engine. So, also, every 12,000 miles, regardless of, oh my gosh, truck driver, is this your first day? Every 12,000 miles, ignoring time, just every 12,000 miles, you do need to check the torque of the chassis bolts because it's a carbon fiber chassis with aluminum subframes bolted to it. those bolts can wiggle themselves loose over time. So every 12,000 miles, either do it yourself or bring it in and have all of those torque specs checked. I did mine about 2,500 miles ago. Every bolt was fine, but I did it a little early. I did it, I think, at the 8,000 mile mark because I already had some things apart. So those are really the only things maintenance-wise that are a bit unusual. As far as repairs, things that aren't supposed to go wrong that go wrong, it's a fairly short list. I have unfortunately fallen victim to one of the very small sample size of people that have had this first issue, and it seems to only happen to the early cars, and I've only heard of it happening to like 2 other people other than myself. But there are 2 very small bolts that attach a dust shield between the engine and transmission, and over time they can back out. And when they back out and fall into the transmission. And usually they get picked up by the flywheel or the clutch and punched into something and cause damage. It has taken out another person's transmission pump and their clutch. It punched a hole in my oil pan. So that was not fun. Luckily, it was the top part of the oil pan. The oil stayed in the bottom, but like I was driving down the road and this big plume of smoke comes out of the car and I went, oh my goodness, shut the car off immediately, had it towed home, had to get out, like I had to go order an inspection camera to like put into the transmission to see what had happened. Fortunately, again, it ended up just being, as far as parts, it wasn't very expensive repair. It was the oil pan and the 2 bolts and a new dust shield. It didn't damage the clutch or anything like that. But it was very labor intensive. I had to take the engine and the transmission out. So if I had to pay somebody else, figure, I don't know, what, 30 hours of labor to do that, it would have been very pricey. So again, I've only seen it happen to a very small sample size of people in the very early cars. So probably not, if you're looking at 2016 or newer, I'm guessing they either stopped using those bolts or started using Loctite or something. So that is one. The other one, and I just heard about this happening to somebody today, which is really scary. The ball joints on these cars apparently have issues. It hasn't happened to me yet. I actually have a new set of ball joints waiting to go in the car. But a handful of people it's happened to where the ball joints, the front ball joints on the front control arms can break. They just shear clean apart, and that wheel will then tuck into the fender. And if you're at speed when that happens, you're probably going to get into an accident. So yeah, not good. Really probably should have been a recall item, but where it's such a small production and such a small sample size of people, probably never going to happen. But I would definitely either ask if the ball joints have ever been replaced on a car that you're looking at, or consider replacing them as soon as you buy the car. That's actually the next thing I'm doing for my winter project, is to put upgraded ball joints from GMS, which is the company that made my seat mounts. Shout out to GMS. Other than that, a lot of people have issues with low voltage because they don't drive the car very often. If you don't put it on a battery tender, battery gets low, it causes electronics to get grumpy and whatever. That happens to any car, so keep a battery tender on the car when you're not using it. Pretty simple. And the last one that I can think of off the top of my head is that all the cars with the leather dashboard are pretty fragile. I see a lot of them with leather delamination off of the dash where it'll start to wrinkle up here. A lot of southern cars that spend time sitting in the sun. So spend $50, get yourself a sunshade and put it in there whenever the car has to sit outside, and you probably won't have to deal with that. My dashboard's in great condition. Oh, okay, actually, you know what? I got one more. Paint. Paint is very soft on the car. I don't know if I talked about this already. I'm sorry if I did, but because all the body panels are composite, the paint is pretty soft, and you get a lot of rock chips, so definitely get some PPF on the nose of the car. And you'll probably have to touch up parts of like the rocker panels and behind the wheels. They just get peppered up. I do it like once a year where I touch up rock chips. It's not fun, but it is what it is. And then last but not least, yeah, the windshields on these are pretty pricey. I mean, you should have full coverage insurance, hopefully, if you're buying one of these, but I think an aftermarket option just came out that's like only $1,200 instead of $4,000 for the OE windshield. But the OE windshield is thinner glass, it's lighter in weight, and therefore a little more susceptible to damage. So I've got a couple nice chips in mine. It's probably due to be replaced. All right, well, hopefully that gives you some really good insight into Coupe versus Spyder, stock versus modified, early versus late, and please feel free to leave any questions in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. You can find me on my socials on Facebook and Instagram. It's Cars and Corey as well. Please like the video, leave a comment below, consider subscribing if you want to see more sports car content from Cars and Corey, and thank you so much for watching.